an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Abhorsen. Chapters 14, 15, 16, and second interlude. In these chapters, our people are impersonating officers, and the officers are only kind of fooled by it. It turns out to be okay, though, because it looks like by being found out, they're getting the help they needed. Fingers crossed. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Huge thank you to Abbey for commissioning this episode. Abbey is out here in the chat as well. Hi. So these chapters are like all set up for the last part of the book, part 3. When I'm starting this section, I am at almost exactly the halfway mark. And I know that there's an excerpt at the end and and about the author, which also gets included in the page numbers. So I'm assuming that we're over halfway through. Let me look at how many chapters are left in part 3, and I won't read the titles. There's 12 more. So yeah, we've got a little while to go here. The first chapter, Flight to the Wall, starts off with the witness of some poor dude trying to convince the people in town that he's not nuts, and he definitely saw a giant owl carrying a dude and a winged dog. And it's so funny because everybody's sort of like, a giant owl carrying a dude, that I can believe, but a dog with wings? I don't know about all this. Which, considering the variety of creatures that we have seen pursue our heroes out of death, or even around the earth, one would think that it wouldn't come as a surprise that literally anything could be possible. Especially this side of the wall where they know, it specifically said they had seen some things. I'm trying to find the spot. This was the borderlands. Many things they had thought never to see had walked the earth the last few days. But a winged dog? To which I'm just like, yeah, guys, yeah. A winged dog isn't that crazy. It's not. It's the kind of thing that the shape of a dog is sort of generic enough that it could be any number of creatures, and he just misunderstood the sight of the thing. So why are y'all acting like this is just out of the question? Just stop being a bunch of weirdos. So Lirael is really, really tired. She's been carrying our folks for a minute here. It says, it was much, much harder to fly as a 20 times sized barking owl than as a normal one, particularly carrying Sam, Mogget, and both packs. Sam had helped along the way by casting charter marks of strength and endurance into her, but a large part of the sustaining magic had been absorbed by the charter skin itself. I have to sit down, she called to the disreputable dog who was flying behind her as pain coursed through her wings again. She picked a clear glade amongst the mass of trees and started to glide in for a landing. Then she suddenly saw their destination. There beyond the forest, a long gray line snaking along the crest of a low hill, going from east to west as far as she could see. The wall that separated the Old Kingdom from Ancestiere. And on the far side of the wall, darkness, the full dark, near midnight of an Ancestieran early spring, spreading up to the wall where it suddenly met the warmth of an Old Kingdom summer evening. It gave Lirael an instant headache, her owl eyes unable to adjust to the contradiction, sunset here and night over there. I don't remember if I knew this was a thing or not. Abby said, yeah, it's not that long since we saw a boar that could run along the top of water, right? This is what I'm saying. Did we know that, literally seasons and the rising and setting of the sun was different in the Old Kingdom than it is in Ancilstier? Because that is a detail that I did not retain, apparently. So I was reading this just like, wait, what? I just didn't. I don't know if it's been mentioned and I forgot, or if there's been no real reason to mention it, or what. Abby says in Sabrio, she checked her almanac to see what day it would be over there when she crossed the wall at the start. Yeah, I guess that I was like, just when you say you're checking the almanac to see what day it is, I'm figuring they function on a different calendar system, not that like the actual time. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I realized that basically it's like as if you are just stepping from the United States to like Australia in one step, and there's just a wall between it, but there's just sudden shift in season and time of day and everything, which I just had no idea that's what that meant. So that's pretty bananas. Like, it's even more completely incomprehensible to me why the people of Ancilstier don't believe in magic then, so many of them. If you can literally look over the wall and be like, oh yeah, it's sunset over there, even though it's midnight here, why wouldn't, like, this plus the people who don't believe in the winged dog, it's just like the threshold for when we decide we're going to believe in weird shit is apparently a lot higher there than it is for me. Like, there's most of this stuff, if I saw the one thing, I'd just be like, well, yeah, obviously magic is real, you know, like, but nevertheless, Abby says most people don't go near the wall, though. I mean, no, they don't, but like, you would expect word to spread that many, many people had seen this, and it doesn't feel like there's any source that people believe. You know, it's all sort of put down as like, oh yeah, well, people say that, but it's all legends and stories. And it's like, there's nobody that everyone can trust, or at least a series of different people that a variety of people trust, who would be like, oh no, yeah, I saw that too. It's definitely like that. And eventually everybody would just take it as, you know, I keep wanting to say you could take a picture at the very least, but I guess those things don't work at the wall very well. I don't know, but let's see. Abby says only people who are actually crossing it go anywhere close to it. I think the people who've actually experienced it don't talk about it that much to folks who haven't. Maybe just kind of a strange thing, but it doesn't really matter that much. I just was very startled by the idea of this and realizing that I hadn't been aware this was how everything worked. So she manages to like kind of rally again once she sees how close they are. And she's thinking that she's going to cross over. And Sam has to be like, no, don't do it. Like, that's probably there are people who are watching this. You need to land on this side, and we need to figure out a way to get over. Finally, they land, and poor Lirael, it is just, she almost like crash lands everybody. And as soon as she does, the charter skin begins to go away, and she's just laying there like spread eagle on the ground, just like, ow. And they have to like figure out exactly what the timing could be of their air travel versus the hemispheres moving on the barges. And she's like thinking, how fast can a barge even go? And she has this sort of idea that like, well, we've really outpaced them and we don't have anything to worry about. Until, of course, Mogget decides to throw cold water over that. And Mogget says, with a spelled wind, they could sail more than 60 leagues in a day and night, said Mogget, a hidden voice of authority from inside Sam's pack. I would presume they reached the Red Mouth around noon today. From there, who knows? It depends how quickly they can move the hemispheres. They may even have crossed, and time is disjointed between the Old Kingdom and Ancilstier. Hedge, aided by the destroyer, may even be able to manipulate that difference to gain a day or more. Margaret, buddy, look. I find you amusing. You can be funny. You can be a pain in the ass, though. And in instances like this, they are literally going as fast as they possibly can. You need to keep that shit to yourself. Just don't say it. Okay? Can we all agree that there are times during which telling somebody the truth is not helpful? I think the truth is usually the best way to go. But I have a big asterisk next to usually. Not always. And there are moments like this where I'm just like, buddy, what are they supposed to do with that information? That's really what it comes down to. When you decide you're going to be like honest with somebody, nobody is ever like, oh, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. You look great. And I think you are an excellent worker and all of your goals will come true. Nobody ever does that. So when it comes down to I'm going to be brutally honest and say some shit to you, the key thing there is, what can that person do with this information? Is there anything actionable, or is it just going to harm them? You know, that's it. And this isn't a big deal, but it just made me go, oh my God, seriously. So Lirael, she's actually in a pretty good mood. And when he says all this, she's just like, oh, here you go, being all cheerful on us as usual. And she's sort of like ready to just push on, even though she is really, really tired, because she recognizes how close they are. And even though she is feeling confident, the charter skin going as well as it did really like improved her mood. She's not stupid. She knows not to get too proud of herself too early. Don't count the apples before they've grown on the tree, is the thing she says. I'm going to put this thing up because I have a beam of sunlight shining directly into my face hole. Ah. All right, hopefully that's good. But yeah, so I really liked this moment with her and the fact that she's super exhausted, but she's just like, all right, let's go. And Sam says something about how getting past the wall is like, fine, I'm pretty sure I can open. He's like, there are gates, they'll be locked and warded. I think I can open them. I'm sure you can, said Lirael encouragingly. Lirael, don't patronize him. What was that? He doesn't need you to. I'm sure you can, sweetie. Good for you. No. Lirael, stop. But yeah. The perimeter is more difficult in some ways. They shoot on sight over there, though most of the troops are around the crossing point to where, so there will only be a chance of patrol this far west. To be on the safe side, I was thinking we might take on the semblance of an officer and a sergeant from the crossing point scouts. You can be the sergeant with a head wound, so you can't talk and get us into trouble. They might believe that, enough not to shoot us straight away. Margaret can stay in my pack, and we can disguise the dog with a glamour to make her look like she's got a collar and breastplate like the army sniffer dogs. And this actually works pretty well initially. The thing is that Sam deeply underestimates the situation over, like, on the other side of the wall. He doesn't understand how serious things have gotten because he hasn't heard about the attack on his parents. So he kind of does all of this as a precaution, not really expecting to be challenged on any of it. And it turns out that wasn't the way to go, because they are challenged pretty much right away. These people, it's honestly encouraging to me, because it would have been really easy for them to be like, all right, they get through, no problem, plan carried off. And instead, Nyx is like, no, the people at the wall who are adults, professionals, who have been employed for this purpose, know what they're fucking doing. Thank you. But they're not idiots. And they definitely would see through the cobbled together, like, glamour and magic of a couple of kids, pretty much, you know. Not to say that Lirael isn't powerful, but they don't have a whole lot of finesse yet in their lives. So Sam says, that he'll do the glamours because he's the one who knows what they need to look like. And he's taking charge of this. And Lirael is like really relieved that she doesn't have to be the one here. And she has a moment with the dog talking about how odd it is that she has a family now. And that it's sort of good and sort of sad. She's happy because she's an Abhorsen. She's figured out that she belongs here. That there are other people that, like the Claire, you would say that they were your family, but it wasn't by blood. It was like a whole other meaning of that word. And to find out that she has literal blood family, it's a very different feeling to her. At the same time, so much of her life she spent feeling like she wasn't part of things and that she didn't belong. That she now is sort of like looking back and wondering if she had been a Claire and gotten the sight and been able to like, would that have been enough? Would she have like just settled for that being exactly what everybody else was? Or would she like not even have the capacity to imagine more than that? And then she wonders about her mother and whether her mother knew what her childhood would be like. If her mother knew that she wasn't going to get the sight and that she, was going to be an outsider growing up. And Mogget says, all of a sudden, that reminds me, your mother left me a message when she was last at the house. And Lirael is like, are you fucking kidding me? And grabs Mogget up and is just like, dude, why would you not tell me right away? Are you serious? And Mogget essentially, it says he pulled himself free, catching his collar against Lirael's hand. She let go just before he could slip out of the leather band, and Rana's warning chime made the cat stop wriggling. Yikes. I don't care for this at all. Don't lose control of yourself like that again, Lirael. I feel like this could go super, super sideways. Thanks, but no. Ariel saw me with you near the wall, said Mogget quickly. She was sitting in her paper wing, and I was handing her a package. I had a different form in those days, you understand. In fact, I probably wouldn't have remembered this if I hadn't taken that shape again after my forced conversation under the house. It's funny how in man shape I remember things differently. I suppose I had to forget in order to not remember until I was where she saw me. Mogget, the message, repeated Lirael. So I find this really, really interesting. I don't know about y'all, but the idea that depending on the form he takes, he remembers different things. Could that be part of why he was told not to take on this other shape? Like that he was told not to until he like kind of had to. Or I guess he could... Because if he could turn into, because the main thing is that he can turn into that other shape anytime there's not an Abhorsen in front of him. So maybe not, because it's just like he could have accessed this memory at any point when he was in that shape with any Abhorsen. So yeah, probably not actually really related, but I think that's kind of a cool idea. Happy says, I suspect he's also more annoying in that form. That's true. So he says, I handed her the package. She was looking into the mist above the waterfall. There was a rainbow there that day, but she did not see it. I saw her eyes cloud with the sight, and she said, You will stand by my daughter near the wall. You will see her groan, as I will not. Tell Lirael that my going will have been no choice of mine. I have linked her life and mine to the Abhorsen, and put the feet of both mother and daughter on a path that will limit our own choosing. Tell her also that I love her and will always love her, and that leaving her will be the death of my heart. Yo, that wording, you could have said that in so many other ways that would not have gotten to me quite as bad. But leaving her will be the death of my heart is so fucking like gut punching to me. There's something about that feels much more the correct way to say exactly that kind of feeling. Like, yeah, I'll be alive. I'll be still walking around, you know, acting like I'm a regular alive person, but the core of who I am will be dead and gone, which brutal. Damn. So yeah, Lirael cries and is interrupted by Sam, who's like, I made your glamour. Sam, fuck. Just read the room, buddy. For fuck's sake. Can you just, for a second, like, be cool, Sam? No, he can't. Bless him. He's not cool. It's fine. Lirael turned to see the glowing outline hanging in the air and stumbled towards it. She had her eyes closed well before she walked into the spell. The golden fire spread across her face like warm, welcoming hands and brushed away her tears. So yeah, again, with me being surprised at how much Lirael is just like, I am going to soldier on, because I thought that she was going to turn and be like, give me a fucking second, Sam. Jesus. But she doesn't. She gets up and she fucking goes right along. And it's the kind of thing where I am tempted to sort of like say, man, if I were her, I would really have needed a moment to collect myself. I would have asked for a moment, you know. But when I look at the actual evidence of what I'm like when I'm dealing with a heavy emotion in front of people, especially when I'm dealing with a heavy emotion in front of people who don't seem fully aware that it's affected me that badly, I have never asked for a second. I have never requested patience. I have never demanded anything of anyone around me, because I don't want to draw attention to the fact that I am having a feeling. So I would have done this exact same thing. I would have gotten to my feet, tears still in my eyes, and just gone into the damn glamour. And I wouldn't have, you know, like, I don't know why I think that I'm the person who is going to be reasonable about my emotional needs. That's never, ever been who I am. And I mean, even some of you may have seen, I shared on Twitter my live tweet of watching Gremlins for the first time, which, by the way, is a fantastic movie. But at the beginning of it, I posted that I was watching Gremlins stoned because I had had a really bad day. And I linked to what my personal Facebook feed where I shared the story of what had happened that day. And long story short, there were I had a series of bad luck for all of last week, pretty much, that culminated in the apparent loss of $400. I mean, there was all these things going on. But the main thing was there was a day in which my cat pissed all over our house, and including on a pile of freshly made toffee that I made for gifts for people. And this spiraled, getting worse and worse, with me discovering puddles of piss all over the place, and like ingredients even being ruined, all this stuff, until I was basically having a nervous breakdown. And while having this like screaming tantrum, I was stirring caramel on the stove. I'm literally about to have a breakdown, and I'm still making a replacement batch of toffee because this other one got ruined. And it's just totally a normal, logical response as a person to just continue to work and make things while you're basically scream crying. Yeah, that's not, you know, but Jesus Christ. So Lirael is like, I mean, one could say it's not clear whether Lirael is just like this as a human being, or if she recognizes in this moment that she just doesn't have time. Nobody has time. And it's better for her to set this aside and get on with things. And maybe she can come back to it and like sort of brood over what she's been told later. Or if this is how she would handle anything like this. I don't feel like I know her well enough, But I am going to like kind of guess the second one, that this is just how she is, based on the fact that she has grown up having to hide the way that she really feels about things from the Claire as a rule, because she just kind of was miserable for the last like 7 years of her life. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to hazard as that's my hypothesis, is that she's like this anyway. But it's just the time crunch that really like spurs her in this moment. So the perimeter, we go to a different POV. There's Lance Corporal Horrocks and Sergeant Evans. And let's see, Skazlow. Get back and tell the lieutenant something's up. The rest of you pass the word to fix bayonets quiet like, and don't nobody do nothing unless I say so. So they are watching as these two figures come out of the mist, and they're both really like suspicious of this, which I appreciated. They don't immediately lower their guard upon being like, oh, look, it's just a couple of people. And one of them's sergeant, I think is the one that, right? Scouts, an officer, and some poor bastard with a bandaged head, and one of them smeller dogs. Evans was thinking about what to do. He'd never heard of Old Kingdom creatures taking the shape of an Ancelsteer, an officer, or of an army dog. Practically invisible shadows? Yes. Ordinary-looking Old Kingdom folk? Yes. Flying horrors? Yes. But there was always a first time. So yeah, I really loved that we get to see this POV and know that these dudes aren't fools, that they have like some understanding of the potential for things to pretend to be something they're not. I just, it goes a long way for me, because it would be very, very easy to try and paint. It's done all the time. All the cops are terrible at their jobs. All the stormtroopers fail to shoot straight, and I like competence here and there. I need that. And especially considering that technically this is our side. Really, I want that competence. So please don't rob me of that, just so that our heroes can have a slightly easier time of things. So they are reporting this, and Tyndall is looking out. He is summoned, and he's asking if they've tried a flare. He says, warn the men that I'm going to cast a light out in front, everyone to stand ready for my orders. Casting now, said Lieutenant Tyndall. A faint charter mark for light appeared in his cupped hand. As it began to brighten, he threw it overarm like a cricket ball directly out in front. A white spark became brighter as it flew through the air till it became a miniature sun, hovering unnaturally over no man's land. In its harsh light, all shadows were banished, and two figures could clearly be seen following the narrow zigzag trail through the wire entanglements. As Horrocks had said, they had a sniffer dog with them, and both wore the khaki uniforms of the Ancelsteran army under the mail coats that were peculiar to the perimeter forces. Some indefinable or unorthodoxy about their webbing gear and weapons also proclaimed them to be members of the Northern Perimeter Reconnaissance Unit, or as they were better known, the Crossing Point Scouts. So yeah, this plan works pretty well initially, and everybody is sort of like putting they're not setting aside their weapons entirely. They're just saying for everybody to not shoot and for these folks to keep their hands up. And at this point, Sameth shares his fake names that he made up, Lieutenant Stone and Sergeant Clare. And they're saying the lieutenant does look sort of familiar, but they don't recognize the names, and they should. These are people who really should know their people. So the fact, that surprised me, because I'm not super familiar with the way that things like this would work, and I imagine it as being honestly, the best approximation I can give about how I imagine this to go is if you work at a Starbucks in a city, and there's 12 other Starbucks in that same city, and maybe the other managers that have been there a while. But if they are new or if they are part-timers or something, you don't know them. So the fact that these guys were all sort of like, I've never heard of them. I was really surprised that that was even a factor. I kind of thought that you could just say you were whoever and they'd all just be like, all right, we're going to have to double check that. But that will take a minute. And apparently not. They can just right out of the gate be like, that doesn't ring any bells with me and that's suspect. So they go out there and they have to test the charter marks. What it is Tyndall like puts his sword to Sameth's throat and then touches it so that like if Sameth were going to try and attack him, the sword will be right at his throat for the instant that he tries anything. Tyndall, like when he touches Sam, he can feel that the mark is correct, that it hasn't been messed with or anything. And let's see. Oh yeah, he repeats the process with Lirael. Once again, he found it uncorrupted. This time, he also realized that the power within the sergeant was very, very strong, as had been Lieutenant Stone's. Both these soldiers were enormously powerful charter mages, the strongest he'd ever encountered, which is pretty dope to know. Like, I assumed that they both had to be pretty powerful. I would love to know more about if there is something about nobility that carries more magic, you know, because Lirael's the Abhorsen. Well, she isn't really, but she doesn't know that. But Sameth is just a prince, you know, so does he have a ton of magic because of his bloodline? Is that an inherited thing? Or is it at random, kind of? Let's see. Oh, right. There's a sort of emergency farther west, explained Tyndall. We were ordered out only an hour ago. It's lucky we were still here, in fact, since the rest of the battalion is halfway to Bane. What kind of emergency? I haven't had word, replied Tyndall. Do you know something? I hope not, replied Sam, but I need to get in touch with HQ as quickly as possible. Do you have a field telephone with you? Yes, but it's not working. The wind from across the wall, I expect. The one at the company CP might just work, I suppose, but otherwise you'll have to go all the way back down to the road. So, at this point, they are accepting, like, very tentatively, that Sam and Lirael are who they say they are. But this dude is not, like, letting his guard down at all, and he senses that there is something about the two of them, that their shape, especially out of the corner of his eye, doesn't match up entirely with the shape that they take on when he looks at them directly, which is such an odd sensation. Shouldn't we get your sergeant to the regimental aid post, he asked. No, said Sam quickly. He'll be all right. We have to get a phone as fast as possible and contact Colonel Dwyer. And he notices also that, like, she's wearing a bandolier. He's like, that's a weird thing. For rifle ammunition? She's not even carrying a rifle. He's not saying she, he's saying he, because Lirael looks like a dude to him right now. But I found that pretty funny, that there's, like, things that Sameth had to include in his glamour to just sort of, like, probably to make the glamour a little bit easier to cast. So rather than try and just hide that she's got this bandolier, he's like, let me turn it into this other thing. Not really thinking about the fact that that draws as much attention to it as anything. We have to get to a phone as fast as possible and contact Colonel Dwyer. Tyndall nodded but didn't say anything. The nod hid a flash of concern across his face and the thoughts that were racing through his head. Lieutenant Colonel Dwyer, who commanded the Crossing Point Scouts, had been on leave for the last 2 months. Tyndall had even seen him off, following a memorable dinner at his father's headquarters. So, yeah, they're out here misstepping right and left because they just don't know any better. And he's like, all right, well, we're going to have to take you to see Colonel Green, or Major Green. And Sam's like, dude, I need a phone. And he tries to be like, his phone might be working, but really it's just like, I need to get you to see the main guy because you guys are clearly full of shit. So he leads them over there, and Sam is just like, when we go to chapter 16, we're in Sam's point of view. Sam is just getting really fucking impatient and anxious now. And when they go into the Major's tent, he sort of gets a bit of it's a dugout, I guess, actually. He has a bit of an idea about what this Major must be like based on the way that this place is set up. Essentially, what it comes down to is the place is really fucking comfy, and that it gives him the vibe of somebody who is lazy and doesn't want to leave their cozy little den. He says someone who probably wouldn't even listen, let alone understand what they needed to do. Sameth is at least gratified to see that the Major has his boots on and has a sword next to his chair and has a holstered revolver hanging by the door. So, like, he's better prepared than I think Sam expected. I feel like Sam expected that they were going to walk in on a guy in his PJs and slippers smoking a pipe. Like, oh, what's this? Forgetting that he even had a job to do, you know? So Lieutenant Tyndall is like, so these are imposters. I don't know what they are. Figure it out. Gotta go. And Major Green's like, oh shit, what's up? Sam tries to, like, double down. And the Major is just like, no, get out of here. I know those names are nothing. I know everybody on this. I know all the officers of the Scouts, the NCOs. I was one for long enough, and I'm pretty familiar with the sniffer dogs, and that one ain't of the breed. I'd be surprised if it could smell a cow pat in a kitchen. At which point the disreputable dog just blurts out, I could so. And everybody in the room is like, oh. I guess we're just doing talking dogs now. Cool. Okay. So finally, Sameth admits who he is. This is Lirael, the Abhorsen in waiting. The dog is a friend. We are all under a glamour. Do I have your permission to remove it? We'll glow a bit, but it isn't dangerous. So they do this, and when they see Sam and they realize, like, they recognize him. And then they look at Lirael and they're like, man, she looks like your mom. And she's like, yep, related. So they have to communicate about this terrible evil in hemispheres being brought up the river. And the Major has a reaction that is not what Sam expected. He thought the Major was just straight up going to be like, that sounds like a bunch of garbage. But instead, he is like, all right, look, I see that you're fucking related to Sabriel. It's really easy to tell. You're wearing the Abhorsen's bandolier. You obviously are a person who doesn't play. So I believe what you're saying. I just don't know what to do. I had a carrier pigeon from Brigade about trouble to the west and a defense alert, but there's been nothing since. Hedge, you say. I knew a sergeant of that name in the Scouts when I first joined. Couldn't be him, though. That was 35 years ago, and he was 50 if he was a day. And Sameth has to be like, dude, fucking phone. Hello, can we stay on task, please? Which happens a few times. The Major keeps on sort of, like, getting caught up in almost like a stream of consciousness, like, oh, is it this? Nah, it's not that guy. Maybe it's well, I don't know. I knew his mother. She made really great iced tea, by the way. But when I was hanging out with him, it was, I think, prom night, and we were with, was her name Jessica? I think it was Jessica. It's like, oh my God, it's an emergency. How many times can we say this? So at this point, he's like, all right, we're going to take you to 3, said the dog. 4, interrupted Mogget, and he fucking pops his head out and is like, hi, they were still hiding another thing. Mogget, fuck. Come on. They all jump, but finally they get everybody comfortable with the idea that there's 4 of them. So he says, I don't suppose you know where this hedge is going if they've got across the perimeter. Forwin Mill. So he sends somebody off to find a map and figure out exactly where that is. And let's see, there was an abandoned sawmill, a broken down dock, and what's left of the railway they once used to bring the trees down from the hills. So that makes sense that there might be usage of the railway happening here, even because these things are gigantic, right? So something that's already like pre-built instead of trying to lug them across roads and stuff, that makes a lot of sense. And 2 Sutherland refugee camps were built there late last year. Norris and Aramton, they're called. There might be 50,000 refugees there, I suppose, under police guard. If the destroyer is made whole, they will be among the first to die, said the dog, and Hedge will reap their spirits as they cross into death, and they will serve him. 50,000. Yikes, kids. Don't like that. Lieutenant Tyndall disappeared into the night, and the major led them at a trot down another communications trench. So they get there, and the dude who is supposed to be like manning the switchboards is drunk. This man has had too much rum and has to like cover his mouth to keep the fumes from reaching the major because he doesn't want to get in trouble. And obviously he was talking to various unhelpful in-between people because his face kept getting redder and redder till Lirael thought his skin would set his mustache on fire. Finally, he reached someone who he listened to for a minute without interruption. Then he slowly put the handset back in its cradle. There is an incursion happening at the western end of the perimeter right now, he said. There were reports of red distress rockets, but we've lost communication from mile 1 to mile 9, so it's a broad attack. No one knows what's going on. General Tyndall has already ordered out a flying column, but apparently he's gone to some other trouble at crossing point. The shiny bum's staff colonel on the other end has ordered me to stay here. So let's see. I don't understand how they could have caught up with us. And Mogget says something about how the time plays tricks. I'd better get in touch with my parents, said Sam. Can you patch into the civilian telephone system? At which point the major's like, oh, fuck. Okay. Yeah, no, well, I'm sorry. I thought that you knew already. Your parents are dead. Their car was destroyed. They were murdered by a bomb. And poor Sam, at this point, just fucking crumples. Like, I really felt for him in this moment. It is just such a blow. He clearly never expected that to happen. Which, like, neither did we. And we know now that they're okay. But, like, hearing about this, it's the same as reading about it at the beginning of the book. Just like, wait, what? That's not how the story's supposed to go. What do you mean? Lirael spent the next few seconds walling off the news, pushing it down to where she had always pushed her distress, somewhere that allowed her to keep on going. If she lived, she would weep for the sister she had never known, as she would weep for Touchstone and her mother and so many other things that had gone wrong in the world. But now there was no time for weeping, since many other sisters, brothers, mothers, fathers, and others depended on them doing what must be done. And Lirael is like, don't think about it. We need to do this. And Sam says we may as well give up. But then stops himself and stands up. And, like, honestly, huge props. Because, again, that is just not, yeah. He takes this coin out again and begins to flip it. And eventually he stopped looking at the spinning coin and straightened up until he was standing at attention opposite Lirael. He didn't snap his fingers to recall the coin. I'm sorry, he whispered. There were tears in his eyes, but he blinked them back. I'm all right now. He bent his head to Lirael and added, Abhorsen. And Lirael is like, fuck. Okay, yeah, I guess I am. She's not, but she will be eventually. So she says, we need as much help as we can get. To which the major's like, I'll come. Most of the company will volunteer, but I can't, like, legally order them. to come. To which Lirael says, I don't understand. Who cares what's legal? Your whole country could be destroyed. Everybody killed everywhere. Don't you understand? I understand. It's just not that simple. And then he stops for a second, thinks about it, puts on a pair of brass knuckles and bashes in all of the mechanisms of this like communication system, which I'm just like, was that necessary? I don't know why you did that, but okay. And says, damn it, it is that simple. I'll order the company to go. After all, the politicos can only shoot me for it later if we win. As for you, Private, if you mention a word of this to anyone, I'll feed you to the cat thing here. Understand? Yum, said Mogget. Oh my God, I love that so much. Yum. Mogget, you creep. But yeah, I really love this moment. Like, Lirael genuinely being like, I don't understand. Who cares what's legal? That is the correct attitude, ma'am. Like, really, that should be the last thing we think about most of the time. Is this legal? It should be, is this the right thing to do? Number one, is it legal? Distant second. And I like that she just straight up is like, no, but genuinely asking, who the fuck cares though? To which he starts to argue and then is like, you know what? Not me. And just like immediately turns around and decides to help. It's great. Abbey says, oh, the royals are also one of the founding bloodlines of the charter, so he probably would be more powerful because of that. Right. Clearly he has some drama queen tendencies under that mustache. Yeah, this is a real like Kylo Ren moment to me, but he's not doing it for the wrong reasons. Kylo Ren's just having a fucking tantrum. He's doing it, I guess, because he's like, well, I don't want anybody letting them know that we're doing something against the rules, I guess? I don't know. It strikes me as like a Quint breaking the radio in Jaws. So they're going to get the dogs going. They'll get us to Forward Mill much faster if they work. They might well do so, said the dog. The wind is veering to the southwest and it's getting colder, but look at the west. They looked. The western horizon was lit by bright flashes of lightning, and there was the dull rumble of distant thunder. So 30 miles / 5 leagues away to Forward Mill. Hedge and his cargo must still be crossing the wall. So that's cool. That's good news, right? So then we go into the second interlude. The blue postal service van crunched its gears as it slowed to make the turnoff from the road into the bricked drive. Then it had to slow even more and judder to a stop because the gates that were normally open were closed. There were also people with guns and swords on the other side. Armed schoolgirls in white tennis dresses or hockey tunics who looked as if they should be holding rackets or hockey sticks rather than weapons. 2 of them kept their rifles trained on the driver while another 2 came through the little postern gate at the wall, the naked blades they held at the ready catching the light of the late afternoon sun. I love this so much. The driver of the van looked up at the gilt, mock Gothic letters above the gate that read, Waverley College, and the smaller inscription below which said, established in 1652 for young ladies of quality. Peculiar bloody quality, he muttered. He didn't like to be afraid of schoolgirls. He looked back to the interior of the van and said more loudly, we're here, Waverley College. So I love this so much that it's the king and queen and that there's like a code special delivery. I'm supposed to say it's Ellie's dad and mom. That'll mean something to you. So you don't go sticking me with a sword or shooting me either. And at this point, the girl that he's talking to is just like, yeah, keep your hands where I can see him. And the queen is like, hey, is that Felicity? And it's a really sweet moment where they're like, on the one hand, I'm really glad you're alive. On the other hand, are you though? again, I really appreciate how cautious everybody is all the time. It means something to me. So let's see. Even though Sabriel was wearing blue postal service overalls and a watch cap pulled low over her night black hair, she was recognizable, but Felicity was still wary. So there's a moment here where they make the driver promise not to say anything, and Sabriel is paying him off, but Touchstone says something like, "You better keep your mouth shut," and the driver's like, "Hey, fuck you. I wasn't going to say anything anyway. I appreciate the money and I'll definitely take it, but that's not why I'm doing this." And then again, he then says something like, "Well, fine, I'm just going to give it back." And I kind of liked this weird interaction. I wonder if this is going to mean anything later. The driver resisted for a moment, then shrugged and replaced the money somewhere inside his jacket and settled sulkily down in his seat. Don't piss the guy off who's got information you don't want shared. Just a tip for me to you. A little piece of advice. So, let's see. The Magistrix comes out. Magistrix Cole. And tries to say I knew that was that was fake news, basically. It seemed like a put-up job. And Sabriel's, because he's basically, the Magistrix is claiming that they just wanted to make everybody believe these two were dead. And Sabriel has to be like, no. Oh, they made an effort, my friend. That wasn't, they really thought they had killed us. This wasn't just a big feint. And Cole, let's see. Cole, I've been calling Cole the Magistrix him, but it's a she. I trust the things we left have not been disturbed. What's the situation? Everything is as you left it. We have had no real trouble yet. I have messages, and she takes out 2 pieces of paper. And it's so funny. The first message was written in blue pencil on a torn piece of letterhead that had the same bugle and scroll symbol that had adorned the side of the postal van. One of our old girls sent that, contributed Cole nervously, as no one said anything. Lornella Akron Janes, who is assistant to the Postmaster General, a copy of a telegram, obviously. I don't know if it ever went to our embassy. Can it be trusted? Aunt Lirael, Abhorsen, and waiting? Is this some other ploy to cloud our minds? It sounds like Sam, she said, even though I don't understand it. Clearly much has been going on in the Old Kingdom. I do not think we will quickly come to the root of it all. So guys, remind me. I don't remember when they sent this telegram. A copy of a telegram. When was this? And I say, guys, help me. Abby's here in the chat. Abby's the only one. They sent a message hawk from Abhorsen's house. Right. Thank you. I was like, I vaguely remember something. So then the next piece of paper, has charter marks on it. Sabriel ran her palm across them and they sprang into bright, vivid life. With them came Elamir's voice, clear and strong as if she stood next to them. Mother, father, I hope you get this very quickly. The Clare have seen much more, too much to tell in this message. So there's great danger beyond our imagining. Blah, blah, blah. Sam is alive. We have to take the paper wings somewhere. Oh, I have an aunt, apparently. Your half-sister. What? Don't interrupt. And then it just ends. And Touchstone is like, I don't like that. Elamir's kind of a perfectionist, and if she got interrupted and had to stop, she'd just start over and do it again. Why have we gotten it partially finished? And Sabriel is like, all right, well, they said that, because what it was that was in the message, the Clare are trying to see what we must do. You must get to Barhedrin by Anstier's Day, or it will be too late. So she's like, all right, well, let's get a calendar and find out when Anstier's Day is. Cole says, that message only got here this morning. A crossing point scout brought it. And he says there's apparently General Kingswold has declared for our country government, etc., etc. So essentially, this is like Coralini coming out and just trying to start a coup, basically. And let's see. I'm trying to find the spot where Clore is a necromancer. It must be something else. Evil dug up near edge. Sabriel stopped in mid-sentence as Felicity and her 3 cohorts staggered in carrying a long brass-bound trunk. And so she opens the trunk, and there is clothes, armor, swords, bell bandolier. She goes to the bottom and gets the almanac and flips through and is like, oh, fuck, Anster's Day is today. And for a second, everybody's like, oh, shit. But then they are like, well, it's morning over there, though, so maybe we can still make it. And they realize that they are going to have to take a paper wing. But the thing is that the paper wing is only supposed to carry 1 person. So they are going to have to ride on the wings, which sounds like a literal nightmare. No, absolutely fucking not. You can't just add another cab or something. Christ's sake. So let's say, what will I tell her parents if she doesn't? I don't know, said Sabriel. I have never known what to tell anybody, except that it is better to do something than nothing, even if the cost is great. I like this a lot. This is Felicity, who is offering to help with the flying. She did not look at Cole as she spoke, but out through the window. And at this point, Sabriel kind of has a bit of a memory nostalgia moment of remembering Jacinth and the bunny. Jacinth was one of the names on the obelisk, but the rabbit outside might well be some distant descendant of Bunny. Life did go on, though it was never without struggle. So they are getting dressed. Touchstone is pretty nervous because he doesn't like flying anyway. And now it's going to be, they're literally on the wings. I just can't. I was talking in the Gravity Falls episode about how I'm afraid of heights. And even in cartoons, even in video games, when people are jumping across big crevasses and abyss underneath them, I can't handle it. I don't like it. So the idea of him already being afraid of flying and then being told, oh yeah, you're going to be on the wings. It's fine. No. There was only a boxy green single-seater biplane that to Touchstone looked as if it depended far too much on its many supporting struts and wires all holding it together. You have to lie on the wings, shouted Felicity. I forgot that the Colonel took the best with. Don't worry, it's not that difficult. There are handholds. I've done it heaps of times. Well, twice. And I've wing-walked, too. Handholds, muttered Touchstone. Yeah, buddy. Worst. The girls pulled at the ropes, dragging out to either side the chocks that held the wheels. The plane rocked forward and then slowly bumped around in a slow arc till it was lined up on the runway and facing the wind. I love this because poor Touchstone, he really thinks that this is going to be a paper wing where oh yeah, we're just going to basically go vertical immediately. But no, it's this long, it's a regular plane takeoff. Basically, it's an aircraft with a runway in front of it where you have to gain momentum. The plane lurched sideways and bounced up into the air. Touchstone sighed with relief as they cleared the wall with inches to spare, then yelled as they went back down again. The ground came up hard, and he was too winded to do anything else as they bounced again and then were finally climbing into the sky. No, thank you. Sorry, heavier than usual. I forgot. So, with a north wind, it was likely the engine would fail within 10 miles of the wall, so they would have to be able to glide at least that far, and preferably a bit farther. It would not do to land in the perimeter. I'm never flying again, muttered Touchstone. Then he remembered Elamir's message. If they did manage to land on the other side of the wall and get to Bahadrin, then they would have to fly somewhere in a paper wing to engage it in battle with an unknown enemy of unknown powers. Yeah, that sucks. Oh yeah, I'm never doing this again. Except for, that moment when I definitely have to in order to save the world. Oh, well, I guess I have to change my plans. So yeah, I feel for this guy. If you don't have a phobia, it's hard to understand how much your gut is affected by that, but it will just fuck up your whole fucking day. So yeah, that's it. Abby says, poor Touchstone. Yeah. Buddy. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you very much, Abby, for commissioning this. This has been a lot of fun to cover. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you've been enjoying the show. And until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.